Money. That's the top subject of today, apart from and directly underneath Jesus Christ nowadays, if I'm not mistaken. If we don't have enough Jesus, that's a problem. But that's a problem that's easily resolved. Not having enough money is completely different, but not unrelated. There's only a opaquish veil of separation between the relationship regarding those two, money and Jesus. I'll tell you right now that Jesus don't really care for money, but he knows where you're coming from. However, I was going to focus my iteration throughout this video on the subject matter regarding money, overlaying the topic of my main point, that being, if you go back in time in your head, hindsight, look at all the money you spent, average it out, doesn't have to be exact, from the time that you were in high school to now or whatever. By the time I graduated high school, from the time I was 10 years old to high school, so 8 years, I had spent over $3.5 million. Most people have. That's your average expenditure. For 8 years, a person will spend that much money without knowing it, without calculating it, premeditating it, or predetermining the allocation of such expenses. But it's even worse when you do that calculation going forward, doubling forward from high school to now. Let's say I'm in my mid-30s. You go from 18 to 34. You're talking about 16 years of expenditure, wild expenditure, because being an adult is a little different when it comes to money. So I can certainly guarantee that I've spent a lot more over the last 16 years than I have the prior 8 years before that. I've wasted a lot of money, not including gambling, drugs, and all that fun stuff. Not including that, although obviously including that. But learning all this stuff that you need to know in order to be on key with what you're spending your money on, your expenditure, for very important things like seed money. As some people say, oh man, if I only had $5,000, knowing what I know now, I could use $5,000 way more effectively than anybody else on the planet. I don't care how savvy you are with coupons or whatever. Intelligence, comprehension, applied mathematics, or implied mathematics. I could spend $5,000 way more effectively than anybody else I can think of, or read about, or look at, on screen or in person. But the only way to have been able to accomplish that is by and through trial and error of misallocated expenditure, which means, you do 15 years of shitting around, dicking off, spending money on stupid stuff, periodically learning the better way to do it, or this or that, or, learning in general about your options, what you can spend your money on, what you should, versus what you have spent it on, what you can spend it on, and what you should spend it on. The monetary trinity. What you spent your money on prior to now, what you can spend your money on that you've learned about to this point, and what you should spend your money on in accordance with your own wishes, wills, and whims, and financial planning, preferences, and prowess. All that shit. At this point, I've spent money on so many of the wrong things, but remembered and retained everything about that, as well as the good things that I would have or could have, and definitely would have, rather, spent my money on, given I could go back and make a change in my decision making, correct this mistake. Not that I would. I wouldn't. Not for $1 billion. Because knowledge is power. And it feels like it's also wealth, That time spent, time is money. But the knowledge gained, the wisdom also, specifically the wisdom, to go along with the very little knowledge in comparison to the wisdom that I've gained for learning how and where to spend my money and when. Very important things. But now that I've learned all that hard shit, it's hard to get money now. To the point now where years ago, each year back in my history, go 34 years old, 33 years old, 32 years old, on back, every year, it gets easier and easier for me to get money, make money, or to obtain money in any way, if not just sporadically, spontaneously, it being given to me or falling out of the fucking sky. Literally, finding it on the ground, whatever. But now I'm to the point where after I've learned all that stuff, that gives me a distinct, extreme advantage over not people in general or the way they spend their money, but over myself and potential errors that I would otherwise make, which I would not, given the current knowledge and wisdom attained through all those trial and errors of misallocated expenditure for the last 16 years. Now it seems like it's almost as if somebody's, the bad guys, government, demons, whatever you want to call them, that's what they're called, seem to be, it feels like I'm being spied on. Go figure. Everybody is. No big deal at this point. At this point, people shouldn't be afraid to even bear themselves on camera no matter what. But it feels like I'm being blocked, by forces that be, forces that want to be, rather. Bad guys, like, oh shit, he's figured out all the tricks and, curbs and ebbs and shit. He's done the math and he's did his homework and he's finished. Now we gotta completely block him off and completely destroy and disrupt any possible chance of this guy being able to get any allocated funding or monetary or money of any kind set back, seed money, in order to start something. Because like I said, I could do a lot of stuff with $5,000, stuff that most people would never even think about, ever, never dream about, never ponder, never even accidentally look up and say, oh, that'd be a good idea to spend that money on. Never would have thought about that unless it weren't for the internet and blah, 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 random looking, searching, blah, blah, blah. You couldn't top me. I could take such a small amount of money and do such a large amount with it. It wouldn't be any wonder why people who don't want to see me become wealthy overnight, or even moderately overnight, within a year, within a day. It's not surprising that those entities, bad guys, don't want to see me with any kind of money or allocated funding in order to progress forward. If I had $5,000, I would have $5 billion in less than a month. Guarantee it. Shit like that. Don't let him get any money. No large amounts of money for this guy. He's too dangerous.